of Brazil have sometimes been considered to be the most beautiful within the world, according to some sources. Whether you see the Brazilian women, naturally you look to their backsides with good reason. The Brazilian women, as well as men, are proud of that fact. And now that particular method of obtaining such a look and feel of a behind, hence the Brazilian butt, is now desired the world over. But there's more to the story than one would assume. Some opinions have said that the proportions are warped and not how exactly a woman should look, as to give complaints that some women have naturally a curvaceous look to the muscles that allows them to have such a shape, and others within the country are pressured to look the same out of the scope of Brazilian beauty, or even the greater concept of Hispanic or Latin beauty. The discussion will be divided into three categories: the history, the genetics, and the controversy. Historical claims and genetics. When the Spanish and Portuguese first explored and colonized South America and the sailors first encountered the native peoples within the region, there were actual claims from those sailors that the women were naturally curvaceous. The European men were actually astonished to find out that the women were nearly all muscular and had a definition and tone to their bodies. Naturally due in part due to the lives in which they lived within the jungle and that part of the world. The desire from the Spanish and Portuguese men were very apparent. When you combine the fact that with the details were on the voyages, no women were allowed, and the tension was naturally there. Portuguese accounts from the native men is that there was such rigorous exercise for both men and women that the physical stature of most of the native peoples, especially near the southern coast of what is now Brazil, was to near that of physical perfection according to the Spanish and Portuguese. The claims of beauty just don't come from the native peoples of Brazil. There have also been similar claims from within Spain and Portugal as well. Aspects of physical beauty also come from those countries as to what a woman should look like with a curved and shapely behind. During colonization by Portugal, the native peoples did not fare well under slavery, and the Portuguese brought Africans from northern and central Africa to Brazil to boost the population as well as to increase production for the Portuguese Empire. As you can imagine, the African women had aspects of physical proportion as well, which naturally added to the allure and complexity of the modern Brazilian woman, who has descent from Portuguese, Spanish, native, and African ancestry. However, racial mixing during early Brazil was situated mostly within its coast and southern regions. As the central and western regions of the country, even the north region of the country, was sparsely populated, and to this day, most women with the Brazilian features mostly live or reside within the southern or coastal regions. After Brazilian independence, the women, as well as the general populace, knew of the racial melting pot that produced such a physical appearance, though internationally not much was known of this, or the appeal of its women to some. During the early 20th century, the American military was having campaigns throughout Central and South America, where some of the earliest sources of the allure of the Brazilian women actually coming from their contact with Colombia during the early stages of construction with the Panama Canal. Claims of the allure of the Brazilian woman came from American sailors and servicemen from as early as the 1930s. These are arguably the first examples of claims of the beauty of the Brazilian woman from a non-Latin source, though nothing more would really be of important notice until after the Second World War. The first modern examples of the Brazilian woman being noticed for her beauty or features internationally would be from the 1950s and 1960s onward. The Brazilian beach coast of Ipanha and scene of Sao Paulo would first gain international attention at this time due to the beauty of the native peoples who resided there and from international exposure who witnessed these people over there. Prominence of the women in Brazil increased, and finally got true international appeal during the Rio Olympics of 2016, when the country itself got international athletes within it, and many of the claims of the beauty of the native women there obtained international attention. But praise, as well as respect, can often have controversy alongside it. Controversy. When discussing the Brazilian woman's body, the topic can be divided into two sections for controversy. The first being the natural exercise method, which according to some sources can be brutal and extreme, to surgery, which is artificial and even life-threatening. It's a fact that women have died during Brazilian butt augmental surgery. The exercise regimen can border on a military routine, because Brazil is so saturated with female models who have finely developed legs and hips. The competition can be extraordinary. According to the Brazilian accounts of beauty and desire, our main goal is to have finely developed outer and inner quads and hamstrings. The bigger, the better. The more pronounced, the more eye-catching it looks, the more beautiful you are viewed to be. There have been confirmed cases of the measurmental circumstance, the circumference of some of the Brazilian women's legs being wider than the measurements of an adult man's skull. That's how extreme the thickness of the leg muscles have been seen. There have even been an imbalance in the proportion of the muscles, as some cases have shown models with finely developed leg muscles of all kinds, and naturally, to get such a result, the upper body has been neglected in some circumstances. Though fitness has been applied to some of the muscle regions, a clear focus has been applied to more of the lower body as the main focus. In many respects, though Brazil has seen rapid development and social advancement, a vast majority of it remains underdeveloped and poor well into the 21st century. Most reside within poor residential slums of the cities throughout the country. These are called the favelas. Most would try to find a method of escape from living in these poor, unsafe, unsanitary locations. A good amount of young Brazilian girls seeking a better life have tried to become models for whatever ends to earn enough money for themselves and possibly their families or loved ones. Thus, this adds to the oversaturation of models within the country and putting further pressure onto the scope of what it is to look beautiful, or the concept of Brazilian beauty. There have even been documentaries in Brazil about young women being put under great pressure to look aesthetically pleasing as possible according to these beliefs that have existed within the country for now hundreds of years. The actual exercise regimen varies from source to source, but a good example is that multiple exercise routines that involve nearly all of the leg muscles are done on nearly a daily basis. It's encouraged to start as young as possible for women, because the sooner they start and keep up a routine, as they naturally age, their bodies grow through the routine, and naturally the body adjusts to it even more, and the size, tone, and definition of such muscles throughout the body is even more pronounced. The end result of such is seen, as many have noticed and commented on internationally, as strong and powerful looking legs and backside. In recent years, the concept has actually spread to other parts of South America, notably Argentina and Colombia, due to the historical connections these countries have had from Spain and Portugal. As anyone would know, exercise is a lot of time, pain, and work for that look and shape. Some people don't necessarily would want to do that, rather just get the results quickly. As a result, the surgery being the second argument. There's controversy behind this because as well as the details surrounding it. The original method for the Brazilian butt surgery was that of silicone breast gel implants that would be used for chest enhancement, instead being used for the backside. Surgeons would make an incision near the top of the butt cheek or the tailbone and slide the silicone breast into the behind of the butt for the butt surgery for appearance. As methods improved, The silicone implant was less and less used, and instead fat was removed from less desirable parts of the body, such as the waist or stomach, and injected into or onto the rectum area. The procedure in question isn't perfect, but it's more safer than the same procedure done in decades gone by. Problems include fat tissue not adjusting to the transfer properly and thus becoming infected and die, this causing a source of serious pain and discoloration for the patient. When exercise causes the muscles to look natural, a surgery can still look artificial, and even though procedures have made the results look better, it's still very easy for anyone to spot someone who's had Brazilian butt surgery. Though the surgery is done within Brazil, most operations occur within America because of the pop stars in that country that have large backsides for the women. General consensus in Brazil is that the exercise method is preferred because not only does it look natural, they prefer their method, which is real and right, arguably, to the surgery, which has been seen as an American cheap shortcut to getting a larger backside or even just second-hand results. There is a final alternative if a person doesn't want or can't do exercise nor have the money to afford a surgery for such results for their backside or legs. First popularized in Colombia, they refer to it as levanta cola jeans, basically padded jeans for your bum. They sell in some cases for just £100 or $130. With the history, genetics, and controversy surrounding aspects of beauty in Brazil, in terms of women for the backside and leg, all that's left is to wonder what others think of such a concept, or such a debate, or topic. Is this normal? Is there something wrong with it? What's viewers and listeners' thoughts on the subject?